Lord Stanley paid a visit to the happiest place on earth.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Friday, August 29th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at Monoman12. Follow the show anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. Shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix and 2 to 4 times a week during the off season. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season's around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now. So, Panther fans, grateful to be back here once again on another edition of the show to discuss everything in the world of the Florida Panthers. Today, we are going to discuss Shawn Thornton's new role outside of the Florida Panthers as he's no longer with the organization, and how championship teams, it's not only catching up to the cap, but also wanting every piece of you when it comes to guys being promoted from assistant coaches to front office. We'll get into that. And also, we will discuss Jake Guentzel discussing his opinion on the open ice hit from Matthew Tkachuk and the state of the Battle of Florida rivalry, and a little bit of Atlantic Division talk as well. And also, we are going to discuss in the final segment the Stanley Cup paying a visit to Disney World, the happiest place on earth. So yes, we spoke earlier in the week about Matthew Caldwell leaving the organization. We also spoke about Bryce Holweg as well, along with Shawn Thornton. So after we released that episode discussing Matthew Caldwell leaving the organization for the Florida Panthers, it was later announced later that day that Shawn Thornton's new position, which he is now taking a new role with the Atlanta Hawks as their senior vice president and chief partnership officer. So that is going to be his new role, going from the Florida Panthers as their chief revenue officer to this new position here in the NBA. And it's a great opportunity for Shawn Thornton. We wish him the best. And I just wanted to spend this first segment on just a discussion about, like I said in the beginning on my preamble, discussing how everyone wants a little piece of championship success. And listen, with how the Panthers have been able to get out of the doldrums to being a model franchise, everyone wants to learn a little bit of how they did it and bringing it into their franchise as well. And also, it's not just about catching up for the salary cap, which we know that it comes for everybody, but opportunities for elevated roles. And this is also the opportunities for the guys who are promoted into these new positions, with Holweg and Thornton leaving the organization. But this goes back as recently as when the Pittsburgh Penguins won back-to-back championships in 2016 and 2017. I mean, when you look at even the coaching staff, the assistant coaches under Mike Sullivan, who took the position. He wasn't the coach to start off for that Pittsburgh Penguins team, but look at the assistants that he had on his staff, and Jacques Martin, who coached the Florida Panthers. Although he took an assistant elsewhere a few years later, he wasn't an immediate hire after they won those back-to-back Stanley Cups. An assistant under the New York Rangers, although he was fired after 1 year, he was immediately back into a coaching position after DJ Smith was fired from the Ottawa Senators, finished off that season right before the Sens decided to hire Travis Green. But although there's also that experience and also being a retread coach, that Stanley Cup, those Stanley Cup championships with Pittsburgh definitely gave him a little bit of leeway to get another opportunity to coach in the league, even if it was for a little while. And also Rick Tocchet, who coached the Arizona Coyotes after those back-to-back cups. He was also a coach in the late 2000s, where the Tampa Bay Lightning were kind of rebuilding around Steven Stamkos, Victor Hedman. They drafted Andre Vasilevsky a few years later, but Rick Tocchet wasn't able to get Tampa Bay out of the bottom of the NHL and even to get them into a playoff spot. He was let go, but building a resume, again, being an assistant coach under Mike Sullivan, gave him that opportunity to become a coach once again. 4 years in Arizona, a few years in Vancouver as well, and now is getting an opportunity, which Tkachuk got to leave under his own terms to begin with in Vancouver, which there was so much drama there with the whole JT Miller, Elias Pettersson situation, but there was an offer for him to become one of the highest paid coaches in Vancouver, but he decided to just say no. Enough of this. I want to get out of this pressure cooker that is Vancouver, and he gets to be with a franchise that he was with in the 80s, where they faced off, where if it wasn't the New York Islanders competing for Stanley Cups, it was the Philadelphia Flyers competing against those Edmonton Oilers teams during that era. But also other assistant coaches who have gotten opportunities, like Todd McClellan. He was an assistant coach under Mike Babcock. He coached in San Jose, LA, and now he has the opportunity in Detroit. Like we speak about these retread coaches. Another one, Craig Berube. It's won a Stanley Cup as an interim coach with St. Louis, and now with that cup under his resume, he is trying to bring that to Toronto. And also Derek Lalonde, who was an assistant under Berube, also was an assistant coach in Tampa Bay, and also trying to bring that has that pedigree, and also trying to bring it to the biggest market in the NHL, which I honestly believe, and we'll discuss maybe a little bit about this more in segment number 2, that I think although there's always pressure in Toronto to win, I feel like because there's not that worry of pending UFAs like Mitch Marner and also a second-year coach in Craig Berube there, I don't think the pressure is as high as it was last season, because there's not going to be, in my opinion, as many consequences there. But guys are also brought to bring championship pedigree, but also coaches are brought in to kind of teach the ways of, like in the case of the San Jose Sharks right now, Ryan Warsofsky, who coached under the Carolina Hurricanes AHL affiliate at the time, which was the Charlotte Checkers, which guess who was on that team as well? Gustav Forsling and Eetu Luostarinen. So he's also getting that opportunity, and he was the coach who won the Calder Cup with the Charlotte Checkers during that time. So taking a little bit of that championship success and trying to bring it to another level. We've also discussed it with Jared Bednar as well, who's won at the ECHL level, AHL level, and now the NHL level, winning the Stanley Cup with the Colorado Avalanche in 2022. And also this also goes to the front office, which this is surrounded around the front office roles that have been left by Shawn Thornton, Bryce Holweg, and Matthew Caldwell, as we mentioned. But Brendan Shanahan, 3-time Stanley Cup champion, played a long time with the Detroit Red Wings, 9 years, won 3 cups there. Also grew into a role in the NHL office from 2010 to 2014, and then took over for Colin Campbell as the senior vice president, where Colin Campbell was promoted to executive vice president, which and then becoming an alternate governor and CEO of the Toronto Maple Leafs from 2014 to 2025, which he got the Leafs from rebuilding to at least being a consistent playoff contender. And look, although they haven't won the cup or even made the conference final, they haven't even made the conference final since 1993. Brendan Shanahan has been able to at least get the Maple Leafs into that position, which, crazy enough, I mentioned him replacing Colin Campbell, which the irony is that he took over for Colin Campbell. Gregory Campbell is with the Florida Panthers, and this is the first time I'm addressing this. The whole the amount of fans who are saying that the league office was favoring the Panthers when it came to that collision between Sam Bennett and Anthony Stolarz, because of the fact that Gregory works under the Panthers organization. But that's neither here nor there. But I tried to not address that on the show purposely there. But also other guys in the front office who have learned under guys who have built some championship teams, like Matthew Darche, who was mostly a career AHLer, learned under Julien Brisebois, was hired just after Steve Yzerman left, and also trying to put his own twist into what he wants to put in the New York Islanders, now being his first year. He's doing the opposite of something probably what Lou Lamoriello would have done. Instead of trading Noah Dobson and just getting draft assets back and building Bridgeport, which at the time that he took over was in the bottom 5 of farm systems in the NHL, which right now the Panthers are right now 29th. But if you're in the bottom but also competing for cups, you'll take that. the Islanders were at the bottom, but not competing for the cup. Same thing with the Ottawa Senators. They're still towards the bottom and haven't gone to the second round in a while. Their last conference final was in 2017, but also relation to other leagues. Lou Lamoriello, although he's been an executive for so many years with the New Jersey Devils, he's been with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He also had some time in the NBA with the New Jersey Nets right before they moved to Brooklyn. They moved to Brooklyn from 2001 to 2004. Gary Bettman, he came from the NBA to the NHL. The reason why we have Eastern Conference and Western Conference, let's not forget, he decided to change that when it was, at the time, the Prince of Wales Conference and the Clarence S. Campbell Conference, which was the West versus the East. So they changed that a little bit. But also different organizations do things a little bit differently. Like there's a unique one where the Chicago Blackhawks and the Chicago Bulls have a joint venture. Everything is split 50-50 with the arena. And then sometimes you'll see some executives on the business side work for both the Chicago Bulls and the Chicago Blackhawks. So that one's a little bit of a unique business model that the Chicago sports franchises run. Not like the Washington Capitals and the New York Rangers, where they're both owned by the same ownership. So the fact that is that winning comes with promotions within, and sometimes other teams wanting a little bit of what you have to give when it comes to trying to build that championship culture into another franchise. And we'll see what happens with Brett Peterson in the future, who's gotten management opportunities on the international level in world championships. We'll see what happens, especially because the Panthers are built from the blue line out. We'll see what happens, especially with Sylvain Lefebvre, who runs the Panthers defense and PK. And let's see if he gets a coaching opportunity. Same thing with Jamie Kompon and Tomo Rutu. So we will see with that of if the guys on the coaching staff and the front office, as we mentioned for Brett Peterson, if that will happen in the future. But don't be surprised if it does. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where Jake Guentzel spoke last week about the rivalry between the Bolts and the Panthers, and also the open ice hit that Matthew Tkachuk laid on him at the end of Game 3. We'll discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And with college football starting this weekend, week 1, with Florida State, Alabama going on Saturday, Miami versus Notre Dame on Sunday from Hard Rock Stadium, and then the Florida Gators also in action as well. This is your chance to also place your bets on who could be winning their conference championships, or even compete for a spot in the college football playoff as well. And you could do that all on FanDuel. We're a week away from the NFL season as well. Will South Florida native Lamar Jackson be able to win his 3rd MVP in his very short career? So what you could also put some bets on, because the Green Bay Packers Super Bowl chances have also increased due to their trade of Micah Parsons just the other day. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app and visit FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Thank you guys once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And we have an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you. We put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and what makes your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes the survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find a link in the show notes. Thanks for helping us out. So what's going on this weekend is the fact that Team USA and Team Canada are both having their orientation camps currently. And there's some viral moments that have been going on already between the two camps. The first one is Connor McDavid. The very first question right out of the gate is discussing the contract situation that he's in. I do believe that he's going to sign an extension with the Oilers. Now it's a matter of what's the term going to look like, because I think he wants to not only get paid a little more after the short-term deal, which that's what we're expecting, but also he wants to make sure that Edmonton is likely a place that he believes is going to create a winner. Which we've seen so many times that if it's not one person with the Florida Panthers getting in on the scoring, it's another. Which we've seen that if the Panthers have shut down McDavid and Draisaitl, they haven't had many other options on their roster. And then there's that still photo of Sam Reinhart like this, thinking. So pouring some salt into the wound there. And also there was a photo of Sam Reinhart just recently at a Vancouver Whitecaps game of the MLS doing a jersey swap with German football legend Thomas Muller, which where were you on the day that Germany defeated Brazil 7-1 in 2014? But Bill Guerin, there was a quote that came out of USA orientation camp discussing going back to the drawing board, which was a little bit intriguing because the fact that USA and Canada went to overtime in the championship game, and then one missed assignment, and then Connor McDavid scores the golden goal for Team Canada, which he was held under check for the most part in that championship game. But it's great to see that even though they lost by one goal, and it's a game of inches, and the fact that they aren't satisfied and they're trying to win gold, and the fact that the USA has this chance to win it in Milano Cortina come 2026, there's no sitting back here, and also a lot of tough decisions there. But also, speaking of Team USA and a teammate of a Panther, Jake Guentzel last week, which we've delayed a lot of the show topics that we from, because these are from last week. But the fact that we've had so many different breaking news with the Panthers this week, with Tkachuk surgery and Matthew Caldwell leaving, we haven't really had time to really discuss some of the discussion points that I've wanted to get to. And so Jake Guentzel was on the Cam and Strick podcast, and he was asked about the open ice hit from Matthew Tkachuk at the end of Game 3, where Tampa Bay won that game. They cut the deficit to a 2-1, where the Panthers won both games in Tampa Bay. And obviously those fireworks really started from the Brandon Hagel hit on Alexander Barkov, where the puck was away. Alexander Barkov did not see Brandon Hagel coming, a shot to the head, but Alexander Barkov ended up not missing any time there. So there's that open ice hit. And then let's not forget the very next game, the forearm to Aaron Ekblad to Brandon Hagel. And then later, that wasn't called a major to begin with. And then Nico Mikkola running Zermits Girgensons to the boards, and then getting a 5-minute major there. And then Ekblad suspended 2 games, misses Game 1 of the Toronto series, which the Panthers ended up losing the first 2 games before coming back from 2-0. 2-0 in Game 3 and 3-1 as well. But Jake Guentzel was asked about the hit. Didn't seem mad about it. So let's also consider this, that Jake Guentzel did not volunteer the answer. He was asked about it. So there's a little bit of hesitancy in his answer, because the fact that Jake Guentzel also plays with Matthew Tkachuk on the international level. So he's trying to walk and toe the line when it comes to his club teammate and his teammate on the international level as well. And also was asked about what hit was worse, and like I said, avoided the answer. And really, Matthew Tkachuk, although it was blindside, got it to the chest, but Barkov didn't get that opportunity to brace himself in on that went back in Game 2. But it also poses the question: does this possibly create any fireworks coming into this year? I do believe that the hits from Hagel and then Ekblad are the ones, but not necessarily the hit from the open ice hit from Matthew Tkachuk on Jake Guentzel there. But I just wonder also if this will be the last year that this rivalry will be the best in the NHL. Calgary's down, so the Battle of Alberta is not really at its best right now. New Jersey is you could flip a coin, and if they don't make the playoffs, I wouldn't be surprised. If they're the President's Trophy, win the President's Trophy, I wouldn't be surprised neither. Health is a big component. I don't know what to make of the New York Rangers, so that Hudson River rivalry, I'm not sure what to make of it. The Kings, the with the their inability to get out of the first round, and with the Anaheim Ducks on their way up trying to compete for a wild card spot, they're not going to be facing the playoffs more than likely. If they do, it's not going to be a situation where you're going to see a 2 versus 3, or I don't think that the LA Kings are going to be winning the division. So I doubt that they have a playoff matchup against one another. But I also think when it comes to this rivalry that, let's go back actually to 2021 when the Panthers lost to the Lightning in 6 games. What happened in the preseason after that? I go back to 2021, the neutral site game in Orlando, at the time called Amway Center. Spencer Knight gets the start. The Panthers win, but it's an all-out brawl basically from puck drop. Over 100 minutes of penalty time between the two teams. And the fact is that these two teams have faced each other 4 times in the last 5 years in the playoffs. The series of the all-time postseason series is tied at 2. That will be the time to get it out of their system when it comes to dropping the gloves. And obviously the Panthers are going to be very strategic with how not because it's against the Lightning, but how many minutes they play in the preseason to give guys some rest. The fact that they've had a shortened offseason compared to the rest of the league. But you got to wonder, also, the fact is that Tampa Bay is getting older. Of the guys on their roster, 9 of them are in their 30s, including the core guys like Victor Hedman, Nikita Kucherov, Vasilevsky, Jake Guentzel, and Braden Point is in his late 20s, almost 30. So the Panthers will be there sooner than we think. But I mean, when you re-sign Brad Marchand, that raises your average age. But I just think about just how hungry other teams are in the Atlantic Division, like an Ottawa Senators, who if Linus Ullmark has a healthy year, they could compete for a top 3 spot in the playoffs. I mean, yeah, the Panthers won the Stanley Cup, but let's also not forget that very few points separated the Panthers and the Senators for that 3rd spot in the Atlantic Division. So they are going to be trying to chase after the Panthers. Montreal, they swept the Panthers in the regular season. And although I still think that they need to find a 2C, they're building from the blue line outward there. And although Toronto's depth is a little better, their top end scoring, with Mitch Marner being an 100-point player and a Selke candidate, which him and Jack Eichel, they're 2 playmakers. How's that going to work in Vegas? I wonder. But Morgan Riley is likely going to go back to power play 1. He struggled in his first year under Craig Berube. What happens there? So I wonder. This Atlantic Division is for the Panthers and the Lightning both to lose, in my opinion. But I just wonder if this is the last year that the rivalry is going to be the rivalry when it comes to where it is at this point. And this is also why it rationalizes Bill Zito and his reasoning for running it back once again, because once again, if the Panthers hadn't been so dominant in the Stanley Cup final when it came to manhandling the Edmonton Oilers, maybe you'll see a bit of changes, which is why we saw that from the 2024 to the 2025 run. But hey, when you are as dominant and you set an NHL record for time, the amount of time leading in a series, you got to take advantage while the players are still at their best. Speaking of, Matthew Tkachuk and Bill Zito paid a visit to the Miami Dolphins to discuss culture and delivered a speech on the biggest factor of winning, and spoke about camaraderie and the buy-in. And we've seen the changes that the Miami Dolphins have tried to make this offseason, with getting players out of here who are not bought into what they're trying to do. And in the case of Jalen Ramsey, and best part, they brought the Stanley Cup with them. So pretty cool feature there from their visit to Miami Gardens. But we're going to transition over to segment number 3, where we're going to discuss more about where the Cup has been. And also the Panthers have also released their prospect showcase roster and their schedule. We'll discuss that a little next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Segment number 3 here on this Friday, August 29th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Friday. And also, before we get to the remaining topics here, Alexander Barkov was seen at the Euro basketball tournament. And after one of the games, or before, I'm not sure when this picture took place, but he took a picture with Utah Jazz forward and from Finland, Lauri Markkanen. And also later on, he was participating in a practice on the ice, like a drop and shoot for him at his home rink in Tampere, Finland, which is the club that he owns there. So also know that what is the captain up to. So a little bit of an interest there from Alexander Barkov. Let's also not forget Alexander Barkov was run into by Dwayne Wade. Dwayne Wade tries to save an inbound play and then goes into the crowd and then hits Alexander Barkov, and was asked after the game if he knew the person that he ran into. And he's like, oh, and remember Dwayne Wade saying that I got to get out to more Panther games. Let's also not forget LeBron James, when he was in South Florida, he ran into former Marlins owner Jeffrey Loria while he was sitting courtside. But the Panthers did release their rookie showcase roster, which we'll get into more of the details of the roster when the time comes. But the dates that the Panthers will be playing in the prospect showcase are Friday, September 12th against the Carolina Hurricanes at 2 p.m., Saturday, 5 p.m. against the Tampa Bay Lightning, and also Monday at 12 p.m. against the Nashville Predators. These games will be taking place in the Tampa Bay area in Wesley Chapel, Florida. So, latest on what is going on with the Stanley Cup. And recently, on Sunday, the Stanley Cup paid a visit to Walt Disney World, but also the day before that, Dmitry Kulikov had his day with the Cup in South Florida. And also the day after the celebration with Kulikov, we spoke about Matthew Tkachuk being on crutches. And also later, the very next day, I saw a picture that surfaced of Brad Marchand and Vladimir Tarasenko taking a skate on the Panthers practice rink in Fort Lauderdale with Brad Marchand in the practice jersey of the Panthers, Vladimir Tarasenko with the Minnesota Wild. And to think that two of Anton Lundell's line mates from the past two Stanley Cup runs on the ice together. So that was a little bit of a warm feeling that I got from seeing that there. But Evan Rodrigues took the Stanley Cup to the happiest place on earth, known as Disney World. And Evan Rodrigues, one of the few guys who have kids on the roster, and one of those guys who, during warmups, him, Jonah Gadjevich, or Gustav Forsling, you always see, if you are facing center ice, you will see in the top right corner for every game, the players saying hi to their kids, and the wives there. You always see them banging on the glass, either trying to get him a puck, saying hi to daddy, and all that. So so Evan Rodrigues took his wife and 3 kids to Walt Disney World, stayed at the Four Seasons Hotel, and there was a video from the Four Seasons Instagram of the Stanley Cup in the background and seeing the fireworks just right behind it. And it's just so picture perfect when it comes to having that as a background. I mean, we've seen so many picture perfect moments with the Stanley Cup. You saw it with the waves coming from the Stanley Cup as it was on the beach. The Evan Rodrigues also did have the Stanley Cup in the lazy river at the hotel as well. Remember, it's saltwater that when it comes to the rules, that the Stanley Cup is not that is prohibited from being in, but not in a pool like they were at the Four Seasons Hotel. But also, Evan Rodrigues was able to hit all the country pavilions throughout his visit in Epcot, including, yes, Canada. But there is no picture of Evan Rodrigues lifting the cup in front of Canada. Although he is Canadian himself, I haven't seen anything in relation to that. But would have been quite a hysterical picture there. But we know the story of the Florida Panthers and the Rat when it came to Scott Mellanby killing it in the locker room, him scoring 2 goals, and then John Van Beesbrook discussing what Scott Mellanby did pregame, and then history told history. That was history when it came to the Florida Panthers, and look what's happened since as a tradition begun during that time. But also when he took it to Epcot and took it to France there, fitting 11 rats, not only 11 rats, but 11 Remys from Ratatouille, fitting it into the Stanley Cup as well. And also there was a video that surfaced of his kids, what looked to to be chocolate milk drinking out of the cup there. So that is another cool feature. And I'm sure they say that Disney World is the place where dreams come true. And I'm sure that right there, when it came to the Stanley Cup, it's just core memories. And the fact is, when it came to taking the Stanley Cup there, it's an act of selflessness. And I'm sure, and I'm not going to pretend like I know what the conversation was like between Erod and his family, but I'm sure it might have gone something along the lines of asking the kids, what do you guys want to do? This is the second year that we are celebrating it. What do you want to do with the cup? And a family agreement, more than likely, of bringing it to Disney World. And also, I'm not a father myself, but I've heard from people who do have children that they're your life, and that in order to make them happy, and when you win a championship trophy, you want to accommodate to their needs. And this is the pure example of accommodating to your children's needs, in this case wants, in the case of a family vacation going to Disney World. So just an outstanding story of bringing it to the happiest place on earth. So happy for the Rodrigues family for that. But that's going to do it for today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. We will be back with you guys next week. After Labor Day, we are going to discuss the EA Sports rankings that came out. We're going to discuss which Panthers are possibly too high, too low, or which ones are just right when it comes to the EA Sports ranking. So thank you guys once again for listening. But it is August 29th, which unfortunately on this day 1 year ago, we lost Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau. Unfortunately, they were both killed by a drunk driver on the weekend of their sister's wedding. And the fact is that the hockey community was hurting, still is hurting. And Johnny's birthday was recently, as Meredith spoke with Good Morning America. She was recently during the draft. She announced the Blue Jackets picks, and the outpouring of love that the hockey community had and brought when it came to Johnny's life. It's a long-lasting legacy that even Team USA during the Four Nations had a jersey of Johnny Gaudreau, which he would have made the team. He probably would have made the team for Team USA for this year's Winter Olympics. And the fact that one person's selfish act took away someone's life and someone gone too soon, it just goes to show that we need to think about more of our actions before we take a sip or any recreational activity that each of us may do. So I just want to take this time to remember the lives of Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau and end this podcast with a little bit of a moment of silence. Thank you guys, and see you guys next week.